Sweetie?
Morning, guys.
He's not in a coma. They don't know what to call it. Went into Dalton's room. There was something in there with him. There's someone who can help.
We took Tri-Field and EMF readings of the whole house.
A strange stillness always seems to settle over the memory of that first encounter with the supernatural world that Insidious unveiled back in 2010, as if the film itself left behind an echo that never fully faded. When audiences stepped into that dimly lit cinematic space for the first time, they weren't expecting the specific kind of fear it delivered, fear that didn't rely on loud chaos or familiar tropes, but a creeping presence that lingered in the corners of every frame. The story carried an unsettling patience, unfolding with the quiet confidence of something that knew it would haunt you long after the lights came back on. This sense of lingering dread became one of the most defining elements of the experience, and it's one reason the film left such a lasting imprint on the genre. As the events took shape, the atmosphere remained thick with unanswered questions, drawing viewers into the strange tension surrounding a family who believed they were confronting a medical problem rather than a paranormal one. What started as a seemingly ordinary struggle turned into a descent into a world that existed just beyond the reach of waking life. Every creak, every shadow, every small disruption in their home began to feel like a signal, a hint of something gathering strength. The film used silence as a tool, allowing the anticipation to build until each moment felt charged, as though something was watching from just outside the frame. This slow tightening of mood is one of the aspects that made the film's approach stand out, shifting the focus from spectacle to emotional vulnerability. The journey took on an unexpected turn when it became clear that the threat was not tied to the house itself but to someone within it. This twist reshaped the familiar haunted house formula and gave the film a distinctive identity. The idea that a person, rather than a place, could be the target opened up darker and more imaginative territory. It allowed the film to explore not just haunting imagery, but the very concept of being trapped within one's own body and mind. And as the characters discovered the truth, the emotional stakes deepened, bringing a sense of urgency that elevated each supernatural encounter from a scare to a meaningful turning point. The introduction of a world known as the Further added a layer of unsettling mythology. Its existence felt both dreamlike and disturbingly real, a quiet dimension where echoes of the living moved alongside the restless dead. The design of this realm, dimly lit, filled with frozen figures, and threaded with eerie stillness, created an unforgettable setting that audiences continued to discuss long after leaving the theater. This world felt like a night terror captured on film, a place where logic dissolved and instinct ruled, where each step forward carried the weight of every fear that refuses to let go. The concept of venturing into such a space gave the film a unique spiritual and psychological depth that set it apart from its contemporaries. As the tension mounted, the connection between the living and the spirits intensified, suggesting a struggle not just for safety, but for identity and control. The film presented its threats not merely as monsters, but as entities driven by longing, rage, or unfinished desires, giving them a presence that felt disturbingly human. This grounded approach made each encounter resonate more deeply, creating the sense that the world between life and death was not just populated by creatures, but by stories that had been cut short or twisted into something unrecognizable. Throughout the unfolding events, a creeping inevitability overshadowed every attempt to restore normalcy. The film maintained a delicate balance between hope and dread, presenting moments of connection, warmth, and determination even as the darkness continued to close in. This emotional foundation is one of the reasons the story remained compelling. It wasn't simply about escaping danger, but about the lengths one would go to protect a loved one caught in a place no one should have to face. These moments of devotion became the emotional heartbeat of the narrative, grounding the supernatural chaos in something deeply human. As the film built toward its climax, the sense of urgency seeped into every scene. The journey into the further became more than a rescue mission. It was a confrontation with the unknown, with all the fears that linger beneath the surface of consciousness. The visual approach heightened the surreal quality of this descent, with shifting shadows, distorted perspectives, and an oppressive silence broken only by the faintest whispers. The film allowed these elements to breathe, relying on them to guide the audience deeper into the nightmare, rather than flooding the screen with constant shocks. This restraint gave the final sequences a haunting power that stayed with viewers long after the story reached its final moments. The central antagonist, a figure known for its sinister grin and clawed hands, emerged as an iconic presence, not because of frequent appearances, but because of the way the film framed its existence. Every glimpse felt like an intrusion, a reminder that some beings gain strength from fear itself. Its movements, design, and the unsettling environment surrounding it helped carve out a place for it in horror culture, becoming one of the memorable images associated with the film. This figure embodied the idea that evil doesn't always need to speak. Sometimes it only needs to watch, to wait, to smile. By the time the story reached its chilling conclusion, the emotional impact felt heavier than the scares. The film refused to tie everything neatly together, choosing instead to leave a lingering question about what truly happens when the boundaries between worlds are crossed. That final, unsettling moment became one of the most talked about elements among fans, sparking discussions about choices, sacrifices, and the unseen consequences that follow. It demonstrated the filmmaker's willingness to let the darkness speak for itself, rather than dilute it with easy answers. As the impact of the film grew, conversations among fans and viewers highlighted how its tone and imaginative world-building opened the door for a larger mythology, one that would eventually expand in later installments. But even long after the sequels and prequels explored new branches of the story, the 2010 chapter remained the purest expression of its style, a quiet, deeply atmospheric horror experience that blended emotional storytelling with supernatural terror. Its legacy rests not only on what it showed, but on what it allowed the mind to fill in the unseen corners, the unheard whispers, the lingering uncertainty that settles in the mind after experiencing something profoundly eerie. Much of the film's staying power came from the way it treated fear as something personal. Instead of relying on chaotic spectacle, it leaned into the kind of dread that takes root in the imagination. Viewers didn't simply watch a haunting unfold. They felt invited into the quiet spaces between its moments, where the possibility of something unseen felt unnervingly real. This approach created a uniquely immersive viewing experience, one that drew audiences into a space where vulnerability became the key ingredient of every scare. The emotional journey of the family at the center of the story carried a relatable weight. Their struggle wasn't just against a supernatural force, but against the fear of losing someone they loved to something they couldn't fully understand. This emotional thread added a sense of gravity that balanced the tension, giving viewers a reason to invest deeply in the outcome. Their hope, frustration, and desperation were woven into the supernatural framework, turning the film into more than a simple series of frightening encounters. Throughout its story, the film maintained a consistent commitment to atmosphere. Each location, from the dim hallways to the unsettling quiet of the further, felt meticulously crafted to play with the audience's senses. The lighting choices, the sudden stillness, the haunting score all blended together to form a rhythm that guided the audience through waves of calm and terror. This immersive environment helped elevate the film from a traditional haunting narrative to something more cinematic and emotionally resonant. The chilling resonance of the story continued to evolve as viewers revisited it over the years. Many discovered new details tucked into the corners of scenes, while others connected the emotional themes to later entries in the franchise. The evolving universe only amplified appreciation for the original film, which established the foundation with such clarity and haunting elegance. Its world, characters, and eerie concepts became touchstones for what followed, giving the series its distinctive identity and emotional core. As the legacy of the film expanded, discussions often circled back to how it redefined the modern horror landscape. Where many films at the time leaned on relentless noise and rapid pacing, this one slowed the cadence, letting the dread simmer. Its success showed that horror could be quiet yet powerful, that fear could be born from anticipation rather than overwhelm. This shift influenced later works in the genre, proving that atmosphere and emotional grounding could carry as much weight as any elaborate scare. Looking back on the film now, it becomes clear how its unique blend of imagination, tension, and emotional sincerity allowed it to leave such a deep mark. It introduced new ideas, crafted memorable imagery, and delivered a final twist that echoed far beyond its ending. The story pulled viewers into a haunting world where the boundaries between the living and the supernatural blurred, creating a sense of unease that felt strangely familiar, like a nightmare you're certain you've had before, even if you can't remember the details. The film's influence continues to ripple through discussions, retrospectives, and fan theories. Its haunting atmosphere and unforgettable moments have earned it a place among the memorable horror stories that refuse to fade. Even now, the lingering memory of that first journey into the further remains potent, reminding audiences just how powerful a well-crafted scare can be when it's rooted in emotion, imagination, and the shadows we often try to ignore.